Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jenny. I'm here today to talk about what has been going on in the world for the last few weeks. Just to put things into context, today is June 4th, 2020. There has been an increasing amount of racism that has been going on in my local area due to COVID-19 and people misinterpreting where this virus is coming from. And so there has been an increase in racism against Asian Canadian people all around. And in the United States, in Minneapolis, George Floyd was horribly murdered by a police officer. And the ensuing protest that is now covering the globe has brought a lot of people into a place of disbelief, fear, a place of complete frustration at the state of the lives of Black people in the United States, but it really spans across the world. Social media has been a wonderful tool for organizers of protests and has been so for quite a few years now in helping with organizing, in helping with educating, and in helping with spreading the word that these atrocities are occurring. In fact, it was a cell phone video that caught the officer red-handed as he murdered George Floyd. As a white booktuber, I feel it is so important for me to speak out. And as I've been listening and trying to absorb what the Black booktuber community and what Black social media people that I follow have been trying to say, it is that they are tired. It is that they are frustrated, that their voices are essentially in an echo chamber, and that they do not feel solidarity from other white people. And what they want, especially right now, is not to be held responsible for educating white people, but to be supported through allyship. And so, in the spirit of allyship, I've created my first tag, and this tag is called the Amplify Tag. The purpose of this tag is to amplify the voices of Black writers, poets, protesters, speech makers, and it has 5 pretty simple steps. Step 1 is you select an essay, poetry, a novel excerpt, or a speech by a person of color or a person from a marginalized voice. So at this stage, I am doing this tag in allyship with Black Lives Matter. In future, perhaps I will do another version of this tag with another marginalized voice. Number 2, you tell everyone why you chose this piece. So if something about it resonates with you, if this is one of your favorite authors, etc. For number 3, you tell us about this author, any information that you have that you can share, what era they come from, etc. Number 4, you read the piece. And number 5, you tag white booktubers. I want to specify why you're going to be tagging white booktubers. Booktubers of color are already doing a large amount of work to promote writers of color, and they are often burning out in their attempts to educate others. And so I'm not asking for us to put the burden back onto booktubers of color in this particular instance. This is about white booktubers joining together in a show of solidarity where we are promoting this work ourselves. I certainly am not going to exclude any booktuber of color who would like to do this tag, and if you would like to do it, please do. But just know that I am not tagging any of the booktubers that I follow of color for a reason. Before I read my piece, I would like to tell you that this tag was inspired by some very particular booktubers who I would like to shout out right now. The first booktuber that inspired this was Liness from Books by Liness. She put out a video yesterday called I Am Disgusted, Booktube Needs to Do Better, where she talked about this lack of voices in general that is going out into the void. So that was a very motivating video for me to watch. The second person I would like to shout out is Kate Hickey, and she commented on Liness's video, and so I clicked through to her video. She did a live stream of Audre Lorde's Dismantling, which is an essay from her book Sister Outsider, and I was very inspired by her reasoning behind why she was doing this. She was trying to put out into BookTube the voices of an important author. Audre Lorde was a Black feminist, woman-positive lesbian author from the 1970s. She wrote very important intersectional works that I would say revolutionized the feminist movement. And Kate wanted to make everything as accessible as possible, and so she wanted to read that piece out loud. She did a live on her channel, and then she did a chat about it, and I thought it was very inspiring, and I told her so, and this tag is inspired by that action that she took. And I'd also like to shout out Erica from The Broken Spine, who posted a video this morning about her experience going through her life as a Black woman, and how tired she is of being asked to educate her white colleagues or people around her. And even with that fatigue, she produced an amazing video, very powerful, explaining in a nutshell the evolution of racism as she has encountered it, and as Americans in general have encountered it over the last 400 years. So without further ado, I'm going to let you know what I am going to be sharing with you today. So I have selected an essay from In Search of Our Mother's Gardens, Womanist Prose by Alice Walker. Alice Walker is one of my favorite writers. She wrote The Color Purple most famously, but she also is a wonderful poet and writes some very powerful essays. The reason that I chose this piece in particular is because it features the work of not only Alice Walker, but also Faith Berry, who wrote a very important biography of Langston Hughes in the 1970s. And in that biography, she talked about his revolutionary poetry and a lot of his writings that were lesser known. And so that is what this essay is about. It is about Alice Walker reviewing essentially Faith Berry's book about Langston Hughes, why she felt it was important, and sharing that information. Good Morning Revolution, Uncollected Writings of Social Protest. In her introduction to this extremely important collection of Langston Hughes's previously uncollected revolutionary work, Faith Berry, its editor, makes the following observation. Quote, Langston Hughes was best known as a folk poet pursuing the theme, I too sing America. But that image, which he accepted though did not choose, is only part of his legacy. During a career which covered 4 decades, in which he tried every literary genre, he wrote some of the most revolutionary works by any American writer of his generation. He was called the poet laureate of the Negro race, but never for reasons which included his most radical verse. Editors, publishers, and critics who hailed him as poet laureate ignored that part of his canon which did not fit his popular image. Seen from their perspective, his revolutionary prose and poetry represented an aberration, an isolated phase of his career." Unquote. However, as Barry demonstrates, Langston Hughes's revolutionary phase spanned 40 years and lasted as long as he lived. For those who have misjudged the nature of Langston Hughes's political commitment, and they are many, this comment by Saunders Redding in the foreword of this book will relieve some of the guilt. Quote, "Hughes was a revolutionary writer and poet. If heretofore the fact has not been operative in the making of his reputation, it is in part Hughes's own fault. That was the way he wanted it." My italics. The plot, as they say, thickens. What does Redding mean? It appears that Langston, with his characteristic warmth toward any idea he felt beneficial to poor and colored peoples, liked very much the revolutionary social and political changes he witnessed in Russia in the early 30s. What is more, he fell in love with the idea of revolution itself, and with the firm touch of a true believer, he personalized it. "Good morning, Revolution. You're the very best friend I ever had. We gonna pal around together from now on." The long poem, Good Morning Revolution, from which this verse is taken, was published in New Masses in 1932. 2 years later, in the same publication, Hughes wrote, "Revolution. Great mob that knows no fear, come here and raise your hand against this man of iron and steel and gold, who's bought and sold you, each one, for the last 1,000 years. Come here, great mob that knows no fear, and tear him limb from limb, split his golden throat from ear to ear, and end his time forever. Now, this year, great mob that knows no fear." But it was his outright admiration of the Soviet Union that caused him trouble, as were true of many writers who found themselves in the 50s hounded by McCarthyism. Although Langston was never a member of the Communist Party, Barry writes, he fell victim, quote, "to that era of unparalleled paranoia when anyone who ever had expressed praise of Russia was branded a public enemy and treated as such." In March 1953, summoned to testify before Joseph McCarthy's Senate Committee on Government Operations, he was pressed to answer such questions as, "Would you tell this committee frankly as to whether or not there was ever a period of time in your life when you believed in the Soviet form of government?" Unquote. Being black and with perfectly good sense, good eyesight, and a highly educated sensibility about racial and economic matters, Langston had found the Soviet form of government quite appealing, having as it did clear advantages over the Jim Crow system of democracy he was used to in America. In an essay called The Soviet Union and Color, Langston wrote, quote, "In a museum in Ashgabat, capital of Turkmenia, I saw signs on the wall as curiosities for the school kids to look at. Sarts keep out in both the Turkoman and Russian language. I was told that in the old days these signs were at the entrances of the big beautiful public park in the heart of Ashgabat. In Tsarist times that park was only for Europeans, white people, not for the native peoples whom whites contemptuously named Sarts, a word equivalent to our worst anti-Negro terms. As I stood looking at these signs in a museum now, but once very real barriers to the colored peoples of Turkmenia, I remembered parks I had seen in my own America where I could not enter, public parks in cities like Charleston and Memphis and Dallas. Even today, after a great world war for democracy, such parks still exist in our United States. They are gone in the Soviet Union." Unquote. It was not only the liberation from racism that delighted him. Langston found that the Soviet Union was the only country in the world where he could have his teeth filled without charge, and he was constantly plagued with tooth troubles and had toothache all over the world. And it pleased him that women, who in Asiatic Russia had been used for their husbands' pleasure in harems, had thrown off their veils and were going to school and could not be bought and sold as they had been before the revolution. From his writings, it was obvious that he preferred the free medicine, free parks, and free women in the Soviet Union to people calling him boy at home. So Barry writes, quote, "As a result of the McCarthy hearings, for several years, Hughes's name was on a list of un-American authors whose books were banned from the USIA libraries throughout the world. His books were also banned from the schools and libraries of certain states that passed anti-communist laws. An influential lecture bureau, which long had scheduled his speaking engagements, canceled his contract. His public appearances often were met with pickets carrying signs with the words traitor, red, and communist sympathizer. Unquote. And so, this sensitive man who made his living from writing surprised Saunders Redding at the All-African Writers' Conference in Africa in 1962, because, although hundreds of representatives from African countries were eager to hear his revolutionary poems against colonialism and imperialism, Langston would not read them. He stuck instead to his conventional verses on conventional themes. Some of Langston's best poems are in this collection, and they point to his basic impatience for revolution, an impatience that was only partly racial. God to Hungry Child. Hungry child, I didn't make this world for you. You didn't buy any stock in my railroad. You didn't invest in my corporation. Where are your shares in Standard Oil? I made the world for the rich, and the will be rich, and the have always been rich, not for you, hungry child. Tired. I am so tired of waiting, aren't you, for the world to become good and beautiful and kind? Let us take a knife and cut the world in two and see what worms are eating at the rind. Barry's finely edited book restores Langston's political thought to its proper context, which is to say, to his autobiography, The Big C and I Wonder as I Wander, and should be read along with these volumes as a part Langston left out. However, I am left wondering if Langston's silence on his revolutionary writing was attributable solely to the reluctance of his publishers to publish it, or to the attacks he endured during the McCarthy era. The behavior of a man as complex as Langston Hughes is never easily understood. I think it is possible that while his enthusiasm for revolution did not change, his enthusiasm for the Soviet Union did. Several people he knew in Russia were purged or imprisoned or killed. This experience was bound to have an impact on a man who, since childhood, was incapable of violence. It made him physically sick. Langston Hughes was also a man with an exquisite sense of justice and an extraordinary degree of tolerance toward individuals, qualities more hardened revolutionaries, those who understand they must shoot people and so go right ahead, scarcely have time to cultivate. He was also committed to his own personal and artistic freedom. Or perhaps he reached that point all serious revolutionary writers reach, when the knowledge that children starve to death in a world of plenty seems to demand a gun across the barricades, not a speech across the podium, not a pen across a page. Writing or speaking about actions that he was not prepared himself to take may have seemed too much a mockery of his integrity. But even if these are true, and I offer them merely as considerations a great artist may have had, they do not negate the fact that Langston saw the coming of revolution in America as a good, long overdue event and was generally impressed with what he saw of revolutions in other countries. When he was in China in 1949, Langston saw small children sold on the streets for sex and sold to factories for labor, their parents too poor to feed them. They say this is no longer true in China. Good morning, Revolution. 1976. So I hope you found that interesting and were able to pull some information out of that reading that you did not know before. I also just wanted to add that all of the videos that I've spoken about here today will be down in the description box down below for your reference and for you to check out when you have time. I'd also like to acknowledge that I found a Black Lives Matter tag, book tag, by Ruth from KindleReads, and it seems that she does not post videos anymore. This tag was created 3 years ago, but that's also a tag that I plan to do in the future. So if you're interested in doing that tag as well, it's a very well thought out and compelling tag, and it is linked down below in the description box as well. I would like to tag 6 booktubers that between them have thousands of followers, way more than I do, and I hope that they will consider doing this tag and then tagging more white booktubers. So I would like to tag Brian at Bookish, Doris at Aldi Books, Alex at bigalbooks, Heidi at My Reading Life, Shaun at Shaun the Book Maniac, and Jaclyn at 6 Minutes for Me. Of course, if you are a white booktuber and you would like to do this tag and spread it around, this is about amplifying. That's what this is all about. And I thank you for listening. I thank you for being here today, and Black Lives Matter.